Hello and welcome to Post-Burnout.com interviews. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. My name is Aaron Kavanagh and I'm the website's founder and editor-in-chief. This is our website's podcast where we publish the full interviews from our site's articles and sometimes release exclusive episodes. In this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, Finn O'Reilly, the vocalist and guitarist of the Dublin gaze-infused rock band Left Iris, and the Polish indie folk singer-songwriter Susie Heart discuss Left Iris and Susie's collaboration on their latest single Heart and Soul, how Finn and Susie met, Finn's production work on Susie's debut EP Journey Through the Shadow, the arduous process of finishing Left Iris's debut EP Love Songs, the overlap and differences between Finn and Susie's respective songwriting styles, how their collaboration will alter each other's work going forward, their future plans, and much more. On May 16th, Left Iris will be performing at the Thomas House in Dublin. This show will be recorded for a live album. Tickets for that show are available in the description of this episode. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Hiya, I'm Susie. I'm just the collab, but Finn is on his way.
Okay,
I know he
great.
is. He must be stuck somewhere.
Okay, no worries. Well, maybe I could actually start by asking you while we wait for Finn to join. Maybe I could start with how you kind of
Yeah.
ended up collaborating on this project and what was your familiarity with the band beforehand?
Oh yeah. I mean, so me and Finn have been working from the start of me being a musician, basically.
Mhm.
So I came to him about a year ago and I was like, hey, so like I've been writing all these songs and I don't really know what to do with them. And like we've been friends before, so it was kind of it kind of felt like seamless, you know. He started kind of helping me out a little bit. I did the majority of the work on my own songs, but then like he helped me quite a bit. Um, and then it was very kind of seamless. Like he was like one day he was like, "Oh hey, yeah, I have this song that I'm working on. What do you think?" And we just kind of started working on it together. So it was very, yeah. So I knew them from the start. I knew Left Iris from the start as well. Um, so it was kind of nice because we started off all together on our own separate paths, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi Finn, how are
it
you?
was very natural.
We're,
Hey.
we're just talking about how Susie kind of got on board for this collaboration.
Yeah.
Maybe if we could hear from your perspective. I mean, how you kind of made this happen.
Well, I suppose I'd been working with Susie for the last kind of year on music, kind of helping her produce some stuff of her own, as well as just kind of just being kind of musical collaborators in a sense of like kind of just like egging each other on to do more and more stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and because of that, we were sending each other a lot of music, you know. So there was this tune I had written, and it just had a really basic little melody, little hook. And I remember sending just a voice note to Susie, and immediately her getting back to me, being like, "This is amazing. This is amazing. This is amazing. I get it. I get it. I get it." You know. Um, and I think from then, Susie basically just had this idea for a harmony line on it, and then I think very quickly it just became apparent that oh, this is definitely going to be a kind of a duet. And it made a lot of sense because there's a song that Susie put out recently called "What a Fate," which kind of has a very similar vibe, which is something I kind of had a small amount of involvement in and kind of producing it and mixing it for. So it kind of feels like a bit of a sister song to that. So it just felt right that we were going to do something together.
Yeah.
Even though stylistically, a lot of our stuff sometimes is quite different to Susie's. This one kind of, there seemed to be a nice, Venn diagram of kind of
Yeah.
crossover of kind of indie, jangly, moody pop music,
How much kind of autonomy did Susie have over like what they were bringing to the song?
Say that again, sorry?
Like how much autonomy did Susie have over the
Oh,
parts
yeah, good
that
question. Quite a
and
lot, actually.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd say quite a lot because, like, I would send stuff over, and she's no stranger to saying yes to this, absolutely not
Yeah.
to this, whatever. So yeah, quite a lot. It was very collaborative. I don't really
Yeah.
think of this as a song that I wrote that I got Susie involved with. It really was very collaborative. I kind of had the main rough sketch of it, but it really kind of came into its own and took on its own thing once Susie started getting involved. Like I remember getting, Logic sessions and files from her, of her harmonizing and trying out different lines and trying out different things on the song, and just it grew. The more and more involvement Susie had, the more uh, of a more of an identity I think that it kind of developed. So
Yeah.
quite a lot actually. It was pretty equal, I would say, for this.
Yeah, it was very much like us sending each other almost sometimes voice notes, like, "Hey, what do
Yeah,
you think of this part?" And then, me kind
yeah,
of creating the harmony for it and being like, "Do you think that works?" And then it was very much step by step,
yeah. Yeah,
verse by
it was
verse.
funny because like literally every day there was probably a couple of weeks. Like the song I think was written. It was before Christmas, wasn't it? Like Susie, was it like
I think so,
October,
yeah.
November, something like that? And there was just whatever this week where we were literally just sending each other voice notes. Yeah, like Susie said, probably just like humming things back and forth.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Being really excited about it. It was also probably the most organic and easy song that I've written and released ever. Like it was the guts of it was done very, very fast. Like
Yeah.
it was a couple of days of going back and forth. And then obviously we had to iron out the kinks and it took a while to really get it to where it is. But in essence it was kind of written in probably a couple of days, which for me personally is crazy because I'm someone who spends so long on songs and spends ages working on stuff. So it was nice. It was a nice change of pace to just have. It's a very easy birth, I would say.
That's nice to hear. Well, I have to ask, before the birth, let's get back to the gestation. When it came to like doing the song, I mean, obviously Left Iris at that time was kind of gearing up to the release of your first EP, which
Yeah,
came back in February, Love Songs, which
yeah,
had kind of been like at least 2 years worth of like material that was kind of
yeah,
going to be coming together
yeah,
for the first time. So simultaneously while working on this track, was
yeah,
that, I don't know, but what was like Love Songs pretty much done, and you could
yeah,
focus on these songs, or how did you
yeah.
kind of spare your time?
Love songs was pretty much done. In fact, anyone who kind of knows us well might remember that we did a Love Songs EP release gig back in August 2025, and then about 6 months later, it actually came out. So it's basically been ready since then. It was actually just the title track that I wasn't able to finish. There was about 9 different versions of that, so that just took forever. So I think this song, and particularly what I'm writing at the moment, and there's a couple of other bits and bobs which Susie actually kind of appears on as well going forward. And all of these songs, they're much more simple in their approach. Like they're coming together a lot faster. And I think probably it's because I'm focusing more on just the songwriting as opposed to getting so bogged down in the production and all the layering and all that stuff, which I love personally, but I think if anything, I'm probably guilty of hiding behind that a little bit. So
Sure.
these songs feel really good because they're really simple, you know what I mean? They're basically 4 chord pop songs, which has never something I've been able to really do well. So it's nice that I'm actually kind of doing that now. So I think it probably was, to answer your question, probably a reaction to that because with all the stuff in Love Songs, it just took forever. It just took so long.
Yeah.
And I got so bogged down in every detail where this was just like, oh, that's cool. All right, let's record it, move on. Which I think personally actually is a really good way to do things, just moving on fast. And also the nature of this kind of being a more of a collaborative song as well was good because I think we kind of held each other a bit more accountable. Whereas
Mm.
normally I'm kind of the person writing the song. So, I'm kind of, I have to be waited on basically to finish, which is nice. It's in a sense, but also it's good to have a deadline as well. So when I was
Yeah.
working on this with Susie, I definitely felt more of a responsibility as well. And she has a great work ethic when it comes to finishing her music. So it was really nice to be able to bounce things back and forth. So it just kind of came together so fast.
Susie, I have to ask. So, yourself and Finn have obviously worked in a kind of musician engineer kind of dynamic, but how does Finn kind of compare as a co-writer versus like as an engineer, or like someone who's on the more technical side? How does it feel like, I guess, the kind of like this new dynamic of like working in a kind of creative partnership?
Oh wow, that's a great question. I to be honest, I think because of most of the work that we've done in the capacity of him being, on the production and recording side was on my music. So I think in that way I get a lot more, veto power and a lot more autonomy in terms of he just kind of is there as an instrument for me.
Yeah.
And of course, he lends his ideas to me and he does help out a lot in the process. But it's very much my work, and he's just there to help bring it to light. Whereas in this process, it was very much just like, it feels, it's really hard to put into words because it was just so natural, and it was just so, I think because we have a relationship, a friendship, you know, that we cultivate. So it kind of felt like that friendship, like in, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it kind of felt like um, the song, or the creation of the song, was kind of a reflection of us working on our friendship, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it felt kind of like we also just um, deepened our friendship in that way too, because it was, yeah, it was very yeah, it was a really beautiful process for me. And there was a lot more communication in terms of, well, what do you think about this and what do you think about that? And um, it was a very delicate process as well, because I think we both felt responsible for it. Um, and it was a very new way of working, in that we both got we both got to have an equal amount of say in it. So yeah, it was an interesting way of working, I think, an interesting way of exploring the relationship.
And I want to ask also, you've obviously done production work for other artists, but you also do the production work for Left Iris as well. So I was wondering, do you notice a change in how you kind of go about doing like the engineering side of the job when it's like your own project, something that you have like I guess kind of like an emotional depth, sorry, excuse me, emotional connection to, or kind of a creative connection to, versus being kind of there to kind of aid someone else's vision? Do you have a different approach for that, or yeah, I don't know. I was just wondering how like
Yeah,
production on. Yeah,
it's a good question because it's something I think about a lot myself because, when I'm doing it for work, um, it's a lot easier to be more objective about things. And, there's that phrase in music and probably in a lot of different art disciplines of, kill your darlings, where it's like,
yeah,
okay, you've got 20 songs and it's like, okay, well, actually 11 of them are good if we're being honest here. So that's obviously, I like to think that I'm good at being objective with myself as well, but it's only in fact, this song in particular, I remember having a lead guitar part for it that I was really happy with, that I'd spent like a day writing. And I had to come back to it a week later and go, okay, yeah, that was really hard and I did it, but it's actually not very good. Like, it's not very
yeah,
interesting, so it has to go out the window. That took me a week to get to with this song. Whereas with other artists I come in, I'm very, perhaps too quick actually, to be a bit like, yeah, that's not very good. That doesn't work. We're not doing that, or I don't think you should do that. So it's a lot easier for sure. It's a lot less taxing with other people, and I think because I'm able to bring my background to other people's music, it can kind of alleviate some of that stress that goes into it. Whereas when it's just me doing all the Left Irish stuff, I mean, that's why the EP took so long to come out, because I was wearing the hat of the songwriter, the arranger, the producer, and then also the mixing engineer. So
yeah,
by the time I got to the latter stages, I was, you know what I mean? Like, I was completely burnt out on it. I had no objectivity left in my brain,
yeah,
which I think is why this track that we put out, Heart and Soul, actually turned out really well. I like, as a song, I'm really proud of it, but as a production and as a mix and all that, I'm really, really happy because it came together so fast. And because, like I was saying earlier, I was able to bounce things to the band, but also to Susie, who, was very, very 50-50 in collaborating on this. It made it a lot easier because she was kind of acting as a producer on this as well, even just by way of me bouncing things off of her, and asking, what do you
yeah,
think about this? What do you think about this? Like, there was some issue with something to do with, like, oh, this verse doesn't sound very good. It just kind of falls a bit flat. What is it? And Susie was the one who actually kind of said, yeah, look, I don't know what it is, but there's something missing, which kind of made me go back, probably a bit sulky, and then figured it out, and then realized, oh, actually, she was right, and then it sounded great. I remember sending it back, and like 30 seconds later, she was like, there you go, that's it.
So you have to ask for yourself. I mean, how does collaborating with Left Iris kind of differ from something you would put out on by yourself, like for versus like I guess kind of like what to you makes a distinction between this is like a Susie Heart collaboration with Left Iris versus just this is one of my own songs.
Can you say that again? How does it differ
For
working by
you, like I
myself
mean,
or
like
with?
yeah, like how do you think like kind of working with Left Iris kind of differs from how you do it yourself?
Oh wow. I mean, it was the first time that I've collaborated with somebody on music.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the process was so I mean, it felt easier because of because of the fact that I had somebody there to be able to bounce things off of and to say like, hey, this works and this doesn't work. Um, I think similarly to what Finn said, very often when I'm working on something alone, I can kind of stew in it for a little bit too long. And and I sit with it for ages and sometimes I get stuck in my own loop. So it's been so helpful to I think because we've decided that this is a collaboration, it just made it so much easier to be able to bounce off these. I mean, we do that anyway. We kind of we egg each other on anyway, and we listen to each other's stuff at times anyway. But it's very different because it's our own stuff. So at the end of the day, Finn will say to me, "Hey, actually, I have some opinions, but this is yours, so you do what you will with it."
Yeah.
um, but with this, it was very much learning how to communicate on certain things and take responsibility for certain things. So I think in that way it's very different. It's being able to externalize that to someone else, um, and have them either verify things being right or wrong. Um, which just yeah, it feels like, sharing is caring. It feels a lot easier to carry together as opposed to sometimes alone. Although I also do enjoy writing things alone because sometimes it's a very personal process and it's a very private process for me in that like a lot of things get channeled into the songs that I put out and a lot of very personal things. And for those songs, it's nice to just have them be just kind of my babies. I think it's really dependent on what you're writing. And this specific song was just perfect for that for that collaborative aspect. So um yeah, I hope that answers the
Mhm.
questions.
It does. I'm going to ask a follow-up question that I'm opening to both of you. The song, by the way, is called Heart and Soul. I can't remember if I mentioned the title just yet. You said just there, Susie, that this was the perfect song for you guys to collaborate on. So I was wondering, maybe if you could talk a bit about the song, like what it's about, and sort of if you could kind of like talk about like how the ideas kind of meshed, like if you can even remember. I know when ever you're collaborating, it's hard to fully credit like this was my idea, this was your idea or whatever. But maybe if you could try and think about like, um, how like what was the germ of the idea, I guess, and then how did both of you kind of build upon that foundation?
I suppose
Sorry, that was very lofty.
I suppose I started the song with literally just like a little hook on this like little 12-string guitar I got. And because of how kind of, I don't know, jaunty it sounds like on a 12-string, the intro to the song has this,
Yeah,
I kind of thought, oh, this is a good like little hook for something kind of uh a song that's kind of complaining about somebody else, but in a kind of a nice, fun, vibey way.
sure.
That's just immediately the feeling I got from it, and I can't remember if I had the hook already. Susie, did I? The "You Took My Heart and Soul," don't you know? I don't remember if I already had that hook or if I just had the
Yeah.
melody. I think I did.
Yeah, you had that. Yeah, you
Yeah,
had that. You had
yeah, I
that
did.
ready.
So that
Hmm.
kind of came first, just that feeling of somebody taking your all your stuff emotionally from you, basically. And then I sent it to Susie before I realized, before we knew it was going to be a collaboration. And I guess she just really resonated with it. And I think just personal things happening in both our lives at that time, we seemed to be writing it from it was weird in a really cool way because we were both kind of writing this song together, kind of about ourselves and our relationships with other people and things going on in our lives. Yet it seemed to be almost the same thing. So we were
Yeah.
kind of, at least from my perspective, I remember us kind of experiencing similar things around a particular time and kind of collaborating on it in that sense, you know. Like I'd even have like a bit of a verse and then Susie would suggest how it would finish and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I remember it starting, Susie, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, because we're friends already, like we would have a lot of conversations about a lot of things happening in our lives, and I think that it just kind of came so organically because of that. And like Finn said, we would kind of finish each other's sentences in that song almost, and then kind of look at each other like this is so weird.
Yeah, and the song was done then. I was like, this is cool. And I was like, does it need a bridge? I don't know. And then I think after this like very long, I think hour-long conversation me and Susie had about something going on in her life, I was like, oh, I've got a bridge idea. There we go.
Yeah.
So it
Well,
kind
actually, so good.
no, yeah, I was just saying that's kind of how it came about. I was so very genuine, authentic song. You know, it wasn't one that because sometimes when I write songs, it's definitely a lot more cryptic, and I sometimes even have to figure out what they're about in hindsight. But this one
Yeah,
was very much like I'm writing this about this particular thing right now,
yeah.
with a kind of alongside this other person, which was kind of trippy, but it was cool.
Well, no, I was going to actually mention that kind of like the room to interpret to have
Mm.
interpretations. I do notice actually in Left Iris songs that there is enough ambiguity left that the listener can kind of impose their own ideas onto to what's actually being sung about.
Yeah,
There's enough, I think, invocation of emotion that gives people, I guess, the kind of direction of where to go,
mm.
but the lyrics are open enough that they can kind of make their own little journey, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Did you find that like with doing like this song, you guys were mentioned that you were doing it like having a similar like life experience at the same time. But do you find that like I don't know, like working together and trying to kind of craft a song around that you were talking about like completing each other's sentences, but was it also
yeah.
kind of maybe articulating the experience for yourself in a way that like one person would have a certain perspective on it that you wouldn't consider and so forth to kind
Yeah.
of work in that sense in terms of just actually an ideas seminar almost in a way.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. And to especially what you said about kind of articulating it, you know, that
Yeah,
definitely felt to be the case with this. I also felt that because it was a collaborative piece and we wanted to be, you know, we wanted to put everything we had into it and be very genuine. So I think something I sometimes struggle with, and I've talked to Susie about this before as a songwriter, is maybe almost leaning too much into ambiguity in songs. You know, I think sometimes it's good to have an air of ambiguity. I love that, but sometimes you don't always want to take a million turns to say what you have to say, you know. And some of my favorite music in the world is just reads like a diary entry, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, so I think as a songwriter, I'm also trying to open the door a little bit to being a bit more like, no, this is the song, this is what it's about, you know. Um, and I think because of this song and its collaborative nature, it kind of lended itself nicely to that because it was two people working on something, you know. I
yeah.
wasn't going to be, you know, saying to Susie, like, well, I'm not telling you what this verse is about. That doesn't make sense. You know, you can't write a song where two people are like trying to hide each other's homework, you know, it's like, just doesn't make sense. And it was really refreshing and it came out really easily that way, you know, because I
Yeah.
wasn't kind of sitting around going, what do I want to say next? It was all, it was so easy. It just came out so easy. Um, yeah, I think some songs you kind of have to workshop along, and then some of them seemingly just kind of like fall in front of you, and you just kind of have to be there with the net ready to catch it. And for me,
Yeah.
this one felt like that. You know, it just felt like it just kind of popped in the ether, and I managed to grab it. You know.
I think in
um
contrast,
so good.
where like I think in contrast, like a lot of the stuff that I write, I'm very open about. This is based on my experience.
Yeah.
And I think it was like an amalgamation of the two things. Really nice. It came together really nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let me ask about that, Susie. So your EP I think was called Journey Through the Shadow, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, it is a very like personal record. It's very forthcoming, I think. Do you do you kind of enjoy like sort of well, actually not enjoy, but do you feel like comfortable kind of being very open and transparent in your lyrics? Because I speak to other artists about this, and there seems to be kind of like mixed results. Like some people are very like, yeah, I'm gonna open the book, I don't care, and other people are kind of like,
Mm.
no, it takes me a bit to kind of really express myself in a public forum. How do you feel about that, Susie?
I mean, it's difficult to be vulnerable, I think,
Yeah,
especially if you're sharing with so many people, or if you're going up on stage and you're sharing an experience. But I find that um I find it almost needed, as a part of art for me. Like for me, that's what it is. It's kind of like digging into the crevices of what's going on for you, and like uh, taking out all the gunk and being like, here it is.
yeah, yeah,
I hope you guys enjoy that. Because I think a lot of the time that's what we look to music for, is like a sense of comfort. And at least that's what I look to music for. And I know that there's, different things that you can get out of music, and a lot of different people get different things out of music. But
true.
personally, that's what I get out of it, is that sense of connection to somebody who may feel a certain way, or maybe going through something, or maybe interpreting something in a similar way to me, and finding comfort in that, and finding like, oh hey, somebody gets that. So I think I write in a way that I listen also, to other
Yeah.
people. Um, so to me, it's it's hard to say, like, it is a difficult process, but it's also something that I can separate from the music.
Yeah, and I just want to ask, like, with again, you were sort of talking about like how um sorry, you're talking about like with this new song with Heart and Soul that there was a certain level of, I guess, openness and frankness that you were kind of bringing upon Finn's sort of propensity towards the abstract, if that's fair to say. Um, I think it's like it's really interesting. But I was wondering, from your perspective, Susie, do you find Left Iris music to be abstract, or is it very clear for you kind of what's being expressed? Do you find the emotion that's being expressed? Because I do. I feel it. Like I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's kind of like more on an interpretive level, if that makes sense, rather than a kind of direct,
Mm.
in your face kind of way. Maybe that's the wrong way of putting it, but kind of in a direct, prosaic way, rather.
Mm.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I'm I'm also a huge fan like of
Yeah,
Left
yeah.
Iris. So like I
That, yeah, you wouldn't be
absolutely.
like, oh no, I think they're shit.
She said worse.
Oh yeah, much worse. um no, but I'm a huge fan of Left Iris music. So I hear a lot of I hear a lot of emotion put into it. Absolutely. I think sometimes I can be a little bit too on the nose, and I try to strive away from that, because it doesn't always work well. But I think they have I think Finn's songwriting has a great ability of telling a story, an emotional story, through someone else's eyes.
Yeah,
And it works really well, I think. So no, absolutely it does. It's just a different type of storytelling, an emotional storytelling, through a different lens.
perfect. Well, thanks very much for your time, guys. You've been very gracious. I just want to ask a few more, and then I'll let you get on with your day. One thing I wanted to ask actually was a little bit about inspirations, and not necessarily just musicians, but I think it'd be kind of maybe interesting to sort of pick your brain and see if there's any overlap and any distinguishings, any differences in terms of like what you're kind of into as artists. So, you can interpret this as broadly as you want, like in terms of like music you like, musicians, songwriters, or even just like writers, artists, filmmakers, whoever you want to interpret it. Who would you say are some of your biggest inspirations, multimedia art inspirations, I guess?
I think we agree on this one, no,
Oh
Finn?
yeah, I was just about to say I have a feeling we're both thinking about the same person. We're both
Yeah.
massive obsessives with Damon Albarn, all things
Yeah.
Damon.
Oh yeah, yeah, really.
So like Gorillas, Blur, whatever, basically anything.
That's
Yeah.
fair. I actually wasn't expecting that as the overlap. That's so
Oh
cool though.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, we're both. In fact, which is interesting because I don't think I knew that about Susie, that to that extent that she was as freakishly obsessed as I am with that man until
Yeah.
fairly recently. You know what I mean? Like it was probably well into our friendship and even collaboration that I was like, oh, you also are really into this.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the obvious one, I guess. I mean, for me, kind of my background and inspiration for a lot of like bands and stuff would be kind of dream poppy and shoegazy bands like My
Yeah.
Bloody Valentine and the Cocktail Twins and stuff like that. It's interesting as well because, again, another reason I think this kind of collaboration worked really well is, a lot of the stuff that Susie, her kind of meat and potatoes, if you will, that I wouldn't be aware of so much in the kind of more, I don't know if you could say folky or kind of, more
Mm.
acoustic world.
Yeah.
A lot of that is extremely dreamy and trippy in a way that really appeals to my senses as well.
Yeah.
So there actually is, I think there is a lot of crossover, even in the artists that we both don't necessarily obsess over together, but there's elements of things. I think that's probably what we both agree on. I feel like we both really enjoy the kind of more dreamy, ethereal vibe
Hmm.
of things, and that could be something like a My Bloody Valentine record for me, or it could be something like, I don't know, a Little Dragon song or
Mm.
whatever it is that Susie's listening to that day. So I think there's a lot of vibe crossover, if that makes sense, as opposed to like specific artists we both want to be like. And I
Yeah.
think that's why the collaboration really worked actually, because she was bringing something very different. Um, so yeah. But also, I have to say as well, um, personally, a big inspiration for me, just outside of music, just as a whole, is the whole kind of DIY scene, in
Yeah.
music, but in everything. Like, that's what I really liked about being a teenager in a band in Dublin, that it was all that, you know what I mean? Like, because there was
Yeah.
no bars that would let you play, so people would like put on gigs by themselves. And I love that. And I think that ethos is just absolutely amazing. And I love when bands and artists kind of cut out the middleman and stop trying to line the pockets of people who don't really care about music, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can go really far with a little bit of work and a bit of care in cultivating your
Mm.
own scene, putting on your own gigs, making your own merch. I just think that's so great. And
Oh,
I
actually, what
really
is kind
support
of pissing me off a little bit, I don't mean to go on too much of a tangent, but I was seeing like, a lot of indie promoters in the
that.
city, like, really been working for years to kind of accumulate, like new bands, kind of like really help them like grow and really put on
Yeah,
shows and stuff. And now I'm seeing, I won't say who, but some of the bigger ones now trying to say, oh, we're doing these showcases now for the acts, and it's like they
yeah,
come like way later. I'm like, I don't know,
yeah.
this seems a little corporate to me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that's a good word for it. There is definitely, and that's probably the same in any kind of capital city, really. It's just going to be a thing, unfortunately. There's always going to
Yeah,
be an element of the corporate, and there's always going to be an element of who has the most money, you know.
yeah,
That's just unfortunately that's just how it is. But I agree with you. I think there is a lot of that in Dublin, and it's frustrating to see. But the cool thing is, you know, I spent a long time feeling anxious and nervous and jealous of not being part of the inner circle of whatever 10 bands seem to be doing really well at any given moment. But then the cool thing is you can look around and realize that there's 100 other amazing acts, singers, bands, whatever in Dublin that are all really cool and
yeah,
great. And all you need to do is just go up and introduce yourself, and then just magic happens. Like, I've
Mhm.
gotten so much out of just genuinely being a fan of Irish music and then just going up and saying hi. Like,
yeah,
that's been the best thing about any of this, has been just making connections with other people and just saying, hey, we're both doing our thing. Do you want to maybe do a gig together, or just supporting each other genuinely? Because it really raises everybody else up. Like,
yeah,
for every, opportunity that someone in our circle gets, it kind of pulls everybody else up with them. You know what I mean? So it's great.
yeah.
Like, even like Susie, like I was I put on a gig about a year and a half ago, and that was her first gig ever. And she was really gracious and really grateful and all that. And, that led to me getting to work with her and, working on my chops as a producer and a mixer. And now she's doing great stuff. Like, last night, she supported this amazing artist, Nessie Gomez, in the Pepper Canister Church. Huge
Oh,
crowd.
lovely.
Yeah, it was unreal. And I was like sitting there going, like, oh my God,
Yeah,
that's
the
like
pepper
sweet
canister
of you
is
to
great.
like,
It's
yeah, it's class.
Waxahachie
I've never
there.
been there
Yeah,
before, actually. It's really cool.
yeah.
Very vibey.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like church gigs are very even if you're not spiritual, church gigs are very they stick with you. I don't know why. I've been to a few and they're always the
Yeah.
ones I tend to remember. Just something about
Yeah,
them, I
no,
don't
yeah,
know.
it's a very different experience. It's a
Yeah,
more of a overall holistic thing as opposed to just going
yeah,
to
pretty
play
much, yeah.
music. Like, yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Um, I also just want to ask one more thing, Finn, just kind of based on something you were saying there about like the scene and those like the music scene is growing. And one thing I noticed, even though Ireland is like such a relatively small country, I
Mm.
find that even now our kind of music scenes are kind of being sort of fragmented in the sense that
Yeah,
I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but like you look at like Belfast, Dublin, Limerick,
yeah,
Cork, Galway, and you look even smaller, you look at like in Dundalk or like wherever in Drogheda,
yeah,
like there's all these like different kind of like music scenes that are kind of rising up, and it seems kind of difficult to even like be on top of it all. I know like a lot of
yeah.
artists, like a lot of people who work very dedicated to this, be it promoters, be it other music journalists, and
Mm.
we're all kind of like struggling, I guess, to find everything. Is it how do you kind of get your voice here, especially? Like even just within Ireland, because like I said,
Mm.
it is there's so many bands, like because I'll be talking to people about bands from Cork and they've like never heard of them, and it seems
Yeah,
like it's a
yeah.
million miles away. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's
It's
weird.
really funny actually because I was chatting to a couple of friends about this, and one friend in particular who, w would be very well connected and knows a lot of people and has her ear to the ground on pretty much everything. And then I was talking about this friend I have who's in a band or was in a band in Galway, and they were again probably one of, if not the most kind of popular street bands of the time. And she'd never heard of them. And she even
Mm.
lived in Galway for a year during that time that they were active. She'd never even heard of them. So even though she was in, you know, uh, Dublin, sorry, she was in Galway, her worlds and this other world didn't necessarily cross over, which I thought was really interesting. And I'm the exact same. I like, you know, I think that I know loads of bands. And then I got asked to do sound engineering for this gig last minute. Last week, and it was all these bands from DCU, and there was this whole other like little scene, and I was like, oh my God, I really don't have any idea what's going on at all. Like
Yeah,
it's impossible.
yeah,
Um, I suppose it's amazing though because I feel like Ireland has a disproportionately large amount of musicians, and to be honest, I think really good musicians. I think the standard overall is very high, and I
yeah.
think the standard has actually only gotten better over time. Like when I was 18, 19 playing in my first band, we were shit, you know what I mean? Like we weren't
Mm.
very good. And now I see 18, 19-year-olds going out and they're like professionals, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah,
not just
that's something I
really
noticed
they're
too. Yeah,
not just really good, they're also really professional. Like they're the
yeah,
way they compose themselves, the way they're standing there, the way they just act. I just feel like the professionalism has just taken a huge step up. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's just because the competition has gotten more fierce, so it just kind of
yeah,
forces everyone up. I don't know if it's because of things like social media and people are a bit more in tune with what it's like to be an actual working performing musician. I really don't know. It's great though,
yeah.
because like, you could go out literally any night of the week and there'll be a gang of 19-year-olds playing the most amazing shit you've ever heard, you know, which
Well,
is
something I
incredible.
was wondering about that though. Do you think that's then intimidating to the generation beneath? Because I remember when I was like, a teenager, you
Mm,
go see like a local band,
yeah.
like, and they're like, anywhere from like 15 to 18,
Mm,
and they're playing kind of shitty. The drummer's out of step just a bit, the guitar isn't perfectly tuned, whatever. Like there's always like these cracks in the armor,
yeah.
and they're mainly playing cover songs of
Yeah.
whatever bands they're listening to, Foo
Yeah.
Fighters or punk
Yeah.
rock
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. And but it's like it's kind of shitty, but
Yeah.
it's accessible. You got like I could get up there and do that. Where I
Yeah.
wonder now if everything being so professional and everything being like really well written originals, is that kind of intimidating then to the next generation who
Yeah.
are the shitty teenagers? I
It's
don't know.
it's a good question. I mean, I think it depends on the person and it depends on your outlook on things.
Yeah.
Like I personally never understood when people would get disheartened by seeing some 9-year-old play Van Halen and go, "Oh
Hmm.
my God, what's the point in me even playing? Because I'm never going to be as good as this 9-year-old from Mongolia who's just shredding Van Halen." You know what I mean? Me
Yeah.
personally, I've never had that luckily in my head where that makes me feel worse. I think the best way to be is to really just be inspired by something because again, you can't control anything else. If the bar band is shit or if they're amazing, it doesn't really make any difference to you. But if they're really good and it inspires somebody else to go, "Ooh, actually, what are they playing? What are they checking out?" Maybe they've gone above just playing 3 chord cover songs. Maybe they're playing stuff that's a bit more interesting. I think that's only a good thing. I can imagine that it must be challenging though at times, and I think probably being a kid now with that as well as social media is probably makes it even harder because you're constantly comparing yourself like to
Yeah.
all day, every day. So I think that's probably tough. Um, I mean, you'd have to ask one of them what it's like, I guess. For me personally, I'm a bit older, so I remember what it's like, be like you were saying, seeing those local bands who, yeah, you enjoyed it and they'd be good, but there'd be definite chinks in the armor, and they'd have lots of
Yeah.
covers, and you'd all kind of have a similar repertoire, and there'd never be a great singer and a great
You were
guitarist
like,
in the
here's
same
Everlong for
band.
the third time tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, actually, yeah, you're dead right. I literally remember playing a gig when I was in my teenage band, and we did a cover of, I think it was a Foo Fighters song, hilariously. And
Yeah.
yeah, again, I think we were the third or fourth band that did that particular song that night. It's like, well, what are
Yeah.
we gonna do? We can't cut our song. You're like, whereas that doesn't. I don't really see that happening nowadays. It just
Yeah.
seems like the level is just so high. You know,
Yeah.
of even just
Yeah.
your kind of average college band, which I think is great. I think it's really good.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thanks very much for your time, guys. I guess the fun thing, if you both wanted to say what your respective projects are up to, what you have coming up.
Yeah, well, with Left Iris, I mean, obviously our song "Heart and Soul" featuring Susie Heart is out now. That
Yeah.
came out just last week, and it's been getting really nice reactions so far. So yeah, we're plugging away with that. So if anyone is listening and hasn't heard it, please check it out. We also just announced our next Dublin headline gig, which is going to be an intimate one in the Thomas House, and
Oh,
we're
lovely.
getting it filmed and we're recording it, and it's going to be a live album, which we're gonna put on the socials and all that jazz later in the year. So that's kind of the next thing for us. Susie, you have anything
Perfect.
coming up?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I just came off the probably the biggest gig I've done so far. So I'm still kind of feeling that,
Riding the high.
yeah, I'm feeling that high, absolutely. But I do have a song that's finished actually that is due to come out in the next 3 weeks. So you can just keep a lookout for that, and then whatever comes after.
Do you want to because it's probably coming out like in a week or two, so do you want to
Mhm.
plug it if if you have
Yeah,
the
so
title?
it's called Cosmic Timing Theory. And it's very different from the EP that I released. I produced it almost entirely, actually entirely by myself. I just sent it to Finn to get it mixed. So I'm very, very proud of it actually because it's a huge step up for me. It feels like a huge step up for me from what I've been doing before. And it's vibe wise, it's very different. I think it's a bit of a surprise. So I hope that people enjoy that.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, guys. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up? Anything I failed to cover? You think people should know?
Um,
I
no, I think you covered
think
everything,
we're
Aaron. I
good.
think you did a pretty
Perfect.
good job. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
your
It was
time as well. It was
thorough.
lovely.
I know, absolutely. It's a great song, and I think everyone should check it out. And
Thank you very
thanks very
much.
much for your time, guys.
Cheers. Thank
Thank
you so
you. Thanks
much.
for having us.
Bye.
See you later.
Absolutely. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, so we hope that you enjoyed and would consider subscribing, giving it a like on YouTube, or a rating anywhere else. We also have some exclusive episodes only available on Spotify, which features interviews with the likes of Kim Deal, Ron Mail of Sparks, Jacob Slater of Wonder Horse, Maria Kelly, Gavin Friday, and many more. So check those out if you're so inclined. Otherwise, thank you for listening and see you next time.